It is time for another professional match of StarCraft 2, and what I got for you today is a Zerg vs Protoss played on Proxima Station between two fan favorites. Spawning in the northeast corner, playing with the yellow Protoss probes, we have none other than Neeblet. And his opponent, spawning in a cross position and playing in red, playing with the drones, he goes by the nickname of Snute, and of course he plays for Team Liquid. Now, like I said, both of these guys are most definitely fan favorites for their respective races. I adore watching both of them, so I'm excited to watch this, you know, probably as much as you are, maybe even a little bit more, because I'm kind of a nerd. I love StarCraft 2, but regardless, let's have a quick look at what both of these guys have got in store for us today. Now, Snute, generally speaking, he's gonna be... If you want to take like a note out of someone's book, right? If you enjoy watching someone that plays a very macro-focused style, Snute is pretty much the Zerg player to watch. He plays pretty much some of the most standard StarCraft 2 as he can, and I mean, while he's perfectly capable of playing cheese as well, if he absolutely needs to, in like, I don't know, I've seen probably a couple of hundred games of this guy at this point. He very seldomly does any kind of cheese. Usually he relies on his macro to close the game out. And really, like, the same can be said for Neeb. I mean, Neeblet, generally speaking, doesn't really like play hyper aggressive either. He's got some of the best Protoss macro in the world, and he's perfectly capable of cheesing once again, right? I mean, he's playing the Protoss pieces, let's be honest. Protoss has got a lot of, you know, less than all-in-y super aggressive strategies that can potentially win you the game as well. Whereas with Zerg, it always feels like you have to go completely all-in if you know, plan to go for an early game victory. But regardless, Neeblet, generally speaking, is also going to be the Protoss player who will be focusing on that macro aspect. And that is why I'm so excited to watch this game, because both of these guys are, you know, they're basically like the similar kind of play styles that are clashing here. And we'll see who is the better player. Neeb opening up with a very standard build here, going for that pylon into the gateway and then the assimilator. He put down the nexus here on the low ground on the in-base expansion as well, whereas we do see the Zerg taking the hatchery first right here on the outward expansion instead. Now, I've seen a couple of people comment on the videos down below, say, why would you take this base first opposed to the one that is a little bit easier to take? Well, generally speaking, if you take the base that is, you know, technically speaking, a little bit more risky, right? Say, for example, Protoss is opening up with a cannon rush. Defending this base right here is almost impossible, but then again, you know, Protoss would have to take the risk, you know, knowing that Zerg also has the option to take the in-base expansion, so generally speaking, it's pretty uncommon anyway. But regardless, the benefits of taking this base, or this base right over here, is that you're going to be able to start spreading creep much more aggressively out on the map, and it's actually really annoying for a Protoss player to deal with, in particular if they're planning to go for some sort of like 2 or 3 base aggression. The creep will always, you know, be all the way out here already by like, you know, a couple of minutes into the game, and if you were to take this base here first instead, it gets a little bit messy, you know, when you want to spread the creep. And at high level, that most definitely does matter. Now, we do see that Stargate going down right here. Of course, Snute knows precisely where he needs to put down his overlords. He's already got full vision of that. It doesn't really matter, though, because, of course, the Oracle openers, which is what most often is going to be the case. The Oracle opener is beneficial, not just for worker harass, but also for the stasis wards a little bit later on. And then, of course, also the revelation that keeps track of where the Zerg's army is located. Now, single depth trying to shade in, trying to get a little bit of vision, but apparently it's seen enough. It's going back home. It knows that it's probably not going to be able to do a whole lot, and Snute is just simply adding on more and more queens, as well as that third hatchery. Now, interestingly enough, for the longest time, we saw Zerg players rush into the Spore Crawlers, and maybe Snute is still going to get a Spore Crawler. Yeah, there we go. He does indeed get one of them at the very least. But Zerg players have gotten way better at dealing with the early game adept play just by simply adding on more and more queens. Queens have sort of become one of the, like, new school kind of, you know, developments in the Zerg versus Protoss matchup. We see a ton more creep spread nowadays, in particular since the Hydra Link Bane kind of style. I really like the Zergling Bane strategies have become a lot more popular. Now, the Oracle is going to be able to get in here. He will try and see if he can maybe get a worker or two, and actually this is not a bad setup for it. Should be able to get at least 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3 of them. A little bit of misfiring there. Wow, 4 of them in total. That is essentially the best that the Protoss player could have hoped for right there. I mean, he lost a bunch of shields and some of the base life of the unit as well. And apparently there's actually a battle cruiser right there on the low ground. But generally speaking, you wouldn't really expect him to get any more than like 1 or 2 workers here at most. Now, there are some Phoenixes out now as well. They're going to try and just simply shoo away at all of the Overlords, and this will free up a, you know, potential for a harass right now with all of these Adepts. In particular, once this upgrade in the Twilight Council for the Adepts finishes up. Third Nexus already about a third of the way done right now for the Protoss player. So really Neeblet is trying to contain his opponent, and he's just trying to nibble away right here at as many of these workers as he can. Now we do see that full wall off right here at the front. These Adepts are not going to be able to achieve a whole lot. Maybe they can shoot away right here at a couple of these drones, but for the most part, they're not going to be able to achieve a whole lot here. And indeed, Snute is just simply going to continue droning, and I quite like this. I mean, this is kind of cheeky. He's going to be capable of starting up roaches here rather than Zerglings and Banelings to deal with these Adepts. And that allows him, of course, to spend more larva on the early game economy. And that's exactly what he wants. Now, apparently, one of these drones may actually end up just barely dying. Nope, not going to be the case, as he will be microed backwards. And Snute, I mean, he will be able to kill that evolution chamber here in just a second. And he's going to be in a pretty solid position. Now, interestingly enough, yeah, there we do indeed see the shade back. Now, interestingly enough, we don't see the Zerg player transition towards that Lingbane style just yet. He is actually, you know, going for the missile upgrade right now as well for those roaches. So that is rather interesting. A lot of Zerg players have been opting to go for that Lingbane Hydra style, where they focus a lot more on the, you know, the melee upgrades in particular, because it helps out a lot against the aggression. Stasis Ward did go down just now, but it looks like Neeblet did get denied there. But apparently Snute has got something else for, you know, for us in store right here. We'll have to keep an eye out on exactly what he plans to defend against all of these Adepts with. Now, once again, I like this a lot. There's just simply a full wall off right there, just ready to get the defenses going. And while there will most definitely be a split up right here to try and prevent these units from really dealing a whole lot of damage, apparently Neeb does decide to shade inside of the main base. Seemed a little bit greedy right there. There's still a bunch of other Adepts though trying to just be a nuisance here, but so many workers actually do still end up falling, even though Snute has got the defenses here ready to, you know, basically stop this from dealing a whole lot of damage. It looks like the majority of the Adepts managed to get on out of there as well, which is really impressive, because with only a handful of Adepts gone, 10 drones ended up falling there in just a matter of seconds. Brilliant decision making right there by Neeblet, not really missing a beat right there. And sure, while he did lose a couple of Adepts, they are most definitely very replaceable, because right now Neeblet is building up to that higher tier army. He's not only getting the Templar Archives, he's making Immortals, he's getting that charge upgrade, and he's really starting to research, you know, for stronger and stronger units. And that's, of course, when Protoss becomes really scary. Now, the question is, did Snute, you know, make a big enough army to potentially overwhelm his opponent right here? I mean, Neeblet did throw away quite a few units here, right? And while he did do 14 workers, that's actually way more than I had anticipated right there. While he did lose 14 workers in total, the fort base is not done just yet. That Stasis Ward will catch a whole lot of these roaches. And I think that, I mean, Neeblet must be pretty happy with this setup right now. He's going to be able to buy himself a whole lot of time here, you know, to warp in more and more units. And, I mean, as good as the defense this can be, I think this is almost like the perfect situation for the Protoss player to be in right now. Supply counts are dead even. Players are both going to have a very menacing army, and Snute realizes it as well. He is going to have to get home, because he knows he will have to try and, you know, hold on to this gold base here in just a little bit. Snute, in the meantime, though, while he was pressuring there on the other side of the map, he realized that he was not going to be able to win right then and there, and he already transitioned towards that Hive as well as the Spire. So it does look like he's going for that greater Spire play. Now Oracle will figure this out as well as early as he possibly can. So I wonder what the transition right here for the Protoss is going to be. Neeblet so far sticking to that Immortal count, but I would love to see him maybe add on like another Stargate or two to go up to either Tempest or maybe even Carriers. Those are generally speaking going to be great options, but it looks like for now he's going to stick to that more standard Archon Immortal Adept style, and this of course is going to be very powerful, in particular if he plans on hitting his opponent's base. And the thing is, there are not a lot of Banelings out just yet. Banelings are great at stopping this kind of engagement, but look at the amount of army that there is currently available here for the Protoss player. This is still going to be a very close one though. The question is, do you really want to commit this much? Massive warp-in inside of the main base of the Zerg player. That does mean that the Zerg will be split up, and he will be forced to split up, leaving this gold base wide open. The Observer will be able to check out exactly what is going on right here. Zealots and Adepts are trying to do whatever damage they can, but really they were more or less like a distraction, as the gold base does get picked up. And while Neeblet does look like he may continue the pressure for a little bit longer, I think he needs to be careful that he doesn't overextend, because Broodlords are going to be out in just a couple of seconds. Yeah, I think we do see the pushback right now. We do see that pushback, and I think this is actually a really good position, though, for the Protoss player to be in. I mean, look at that. Neeblet has secured that 4th base here as well. He's been just simply methodically, you know, killing his opponent's units, and he's just trying to keep the Zerg player contained in a way that normally Zerg controls this matchup as well. Zerg is usually the one that's trying to make sure that Protoss doesn't get all their bases out, and Neeblet is just slowly and methodically picking his opponent apart so far into this match. Now, a huge amount of Banelings, Roaches, and Ravages are available here. Corrosive Biles do go down on a huge chunk of this army, and that is a very scary thing to do, but these force fields, they will split off half of that Zerg army, and while they do get broken by the Corrosive Biles as well, the majority of that Zerg army did end up getting killed there, you know, in favor of maybe... Wow, that was weird. He actually ended up canceling his own things. Oh man, look at that huge warping right there. A couple of the Archons did also ended up getting killed there. But all things considered, I would most definitely call that once again an advantage right here in favor of the Protoss. Now I'm starting to get a little bit worried here. The thing is that Zerg will shortly be able to get Brood Lords out, right? The Greatest Spire, it's already done. He hasn't got any Corruptors out just yet, if I am not mistaken, but this is still going to be a little bit strange here. Or actually, the majority of the Protoss army is now out on the map. Zerg was just planning to go for an attack himself as well, so this is going to be a very important one. The force fields need to be spot on. No force fields going down just yet, but beautiful micro backwards, trying to keep the Zerg player contained. But the question is there not just simply a little bit too much of the swarm available? It does look like Liquid Snute is going to be able to overwhelm this force here. Caught at a weird angle. Neeblet ended up doing a lot of damage. A huge warping goes down, but so do the Corrosive Biles. Your Warp Prism gets shut down. And I think that even though Zerg was at a deficit just now, we see the beginning of what could potentially be a comeback right now. Beautiful engagement here by the Zerg player, trying to make the best of a bad situation. Catching his opponent right here in the wide open area, right? Would that engagement have been a little bit closer to the ramp? The force field could have been, you know, absolutely, you know, meaningful there. But all things considered, that was most definitely an engagement, and I think the first engagement that went heavily in favor here of the Zerg. Now, does he have the force here to hammer this one home as well? Neeblet is now taking another base here. That's going to be his 5th nexus. It's going to be at the gold base. Rocks are right over here are not knocked down just yet, so that does mean that he needs to be very careful. One hero Zealot scouting out that indeed the swarm is moving in this direction, and while it will fight for ire, it will quickly go down as well. Now, we do finally see that transition here for Neeblet, adding on 2 more Stargates as well as that fleet beacon. But he will have to hold on to this engagement right here. Looks like the gold base will actually be left alone here for the time being by the swarm player, but I'm starting to get a little bit worried here because there are a lot of Protoss units available, and while the supply counts were just now heavily in favor of the Zerg, it has been evened up already just by the sheer amount of economy that the Protoss player has been having for a long amount of time. Now, these Banelings, though, these Banelings are going to be able to roll into these juicy Zealots if you do not land those force fields. A beautiful move there. Both players really trying to outmaneuver each other, and so far it's been neck and neck. I mean, both players just trying to get as much value as they can. Once again, though, the probes did get pulled there. A few of them do end up falling at the same time. Warp Prism makes its way towards the main base here of the Zerg player, and it looks like in the meantime, the majority of the Zerg force here will be pushed back as well, and I think that this is going to be a breath of relief right here for Neeblet, because he knows he is still in this match, even though he just ended up losing a huge chunk of his force. Finally, we do see Corruptors coming out. There's a Mothership coming in, and I think that shortly we're going to see either Tempest or even Carrier production. The Carriers are indeed coming out, and Carriers, of course, are extremely valuable. This has been really well played by Neeblet, making the best of that situation, right? But more importantly, he secured a huge amount of economy. I mean, he's going to try and just simply throw away a bunch of these Zealots. He doesn't really need them anymore because he's trying to replace them with higher tier units, but I mean, at this angle, he's going to be able to pick off a base very easily if the Zerg is not paying close attention. Now, there are a whole lot of Zealots here, but there are a whole lot of Banelings and you know, Zerglings ready to defend against this too. At the same time, the Warp Prism did end up dropping off a couple of the Zealots here inside of the natural expansion, or I guess that would be the 3rd base of the Zerg. But look at that upgrade right here for those Zealots, and while the Banelings come in there as quickly as they could, and while only a couple of drones ended up getting killed, that was most definitely a solid engagement once again, as that just simply slows down the Protoss, and really, or slows down the Zerg rather, and really what the Zerg player is, you know, trying to prevent here is to get the Protoss to max out. Look at that though. Neeblet is already getting a whole bunch of these carriers out, and we all know, I mean, if you are a Zerg player, you know the strength of this composition. If more than, say, like 6 carriers or so enter the battlefield, things are gonna be absolutely terrifying. On top of that, all of these units can be cloaked now that the Mothership is out as well. Looks like we do see a split off right here. between the different forces. There's quite a few Archons available as well as cannons right now at this right-hand side of the map. So I don't think the Zerglings are really going to be able to do a whole lot right here just yet. And I mean, the first carriers, they're out. They're going to be able to start producing those interceptors. I don't know if you already have that upgrade for them. Yeah, we do indeed have that upgrade right there in the fleet beacon. That's an absolutely crucial one. I didn't see it on the production tab just now. A very important upgrade that basically launches the interceptors faster when you do attack with the carriers. Without them, carriers are almost useless. But at this point, I mean, Zerg indeed. I mean, he feels like he's overextending right now, and I think it may very well be the case. The majority, though, of the Protoss army here is moving across the center part of this map, but it's not quite grouped up with all of this supply here on the right-hand side of the map. So I think he was, you know, just mostly posturing right there, trying to make sure that the Zerg does not overstep his boundaries. I mean, Snute has got a solid army here, right? Snute has got a really powerful and strong force, but I'm starting to get a little bit worried for him here. First off, the defenses here have been spot on. Look at the amount of cannons that are available. Now, the majority of the Archons did end up leaving there, but I'm still getting a little bit worried here just by the sheer amount of size and the sheer amount of, like, beefiness, I suppose, that the Protoss army has got right now. We do see a mass recall right there. Very well done. That was an overextension by the Protoss player. He's going to be able to get on out of here with relative ease once again. This does, of course, open up the opportunity, but apparently Neeblet knows it. He's just simply going to mass recall towards this other base instead. The carriers arrive, and with really only a couple of probes going down. Oh my god. I said a couple of probes going down. There were 3 probes that ended up getting killed there, but then one hero bailing blew up an additional 16. All of a sudden, this game is once again in favor here of the Zerg player. I love the back and forth play right here between these two titans. I mean, they're trying to deal damage to each other, right? Look at the amount of cannons here. Zerglings, though, they are well upgraded. They do have their chitinous, or rather the adrenal glands upgrade. That does make them extremely quick at killing all of these buildings, but there's still so many cannons. The thing is, though, of course, that while Zerg did indeed secure a nice lead here, right? He did secure a nice upper hand when it comes to the supply count. He can't really drive it home just yet. And there's so much production here for the Protoss still. Carriers are going down. We see Archons being morphed in. We see more and more High Templar. This is going to be a composition based around a Mothership, Carriers, Immortals, Storm, Archons. And this is a really powerful force to try and deal with if you are the Zerg player in red right now. And I wonder if Snute has got the spellcast that he needs to try and make this one work. I mean, he needs more economy. He's got a nice amount of bank already, but he needs a lot of Spore Crawlers. He needs to get Vipers out. He needs to get Infestors out to properly deal with his army one-on-one once the Protoss player inevitably maxes out. I mean, so far, Protoss has been able to mine from a huge amount of mineral patches, but here it goes. I think that Snute is ready to take a massive engagement right here at the majority of this Protoss army. Look at all these units clashing right now. I can't help but wonder, though, if these storms aren't doing a little bit too much damage, but hold that thought while the Bailings are trying to roll into those mineral lines once again. The Mothership is providing a huge amount of utility here as well. There are a whole lot of Zerg units still left over, but the majority of them do not shoot up, and that means that eventually all of these Brute Lords, as well as all of these Ravagers, will get cleaned up. The Interceptors doing as much damage as they can. The Archons on the chase right now as well, trying to shut down the last of the Brute Lords, and that was an extremely solid engagement for the Protoss player right here. Sure, he ended up losing a lot of units, but he knows as well that the Zerg is not gonna have a huge amount of economy anymore at this point in the game either. Void Rays are now even being added on, and I like that one a lot, knowing that his opponent is focusing his anti-air primarily on Corruptors. They of course deal bonus damage against Armored, which is very solid. And while Snute is desperately trying to produce an army once again right now, made up about, you know, mostly Zerglings, Roaches, and you know, a bunch of Corruptors here, I wonder if the tech of his army, right, the tier list right here of his army is just not simply a little bit too low. Supply counts once again here in favor of the Protoss. He's gonna try and secure that base here in the top left hand side of the map as well. But look at all of these. Oh man, all of these air units are dealing so much damage. Archons are gonna be able to soak up a ton of these Bailing hits. But in the end, there's just simply too much Protoss, and with some great back and forth high level gameplay, eventually we arrive at the final moment of this game where Neeblet obtains the victory. I hope you enjoyed watching this match. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below, and if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. And other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright, and I will see you in the next one.